The key to transformation. Bitter water turned sweet. Today's focus, the turning point in Naomi's life. Fine Foods, 7 minutes a day, 1 Bible a year. Grace and peace, everyone. Our reading today brings us to a new book, Ruth, chapters 1 through 4. The book of Ruth has only 4 chapters, so we'll finish it in one video. Our key verse is, Naomi has a son, and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. Ruth 4. We know the entire Bible speaks of Jesus Christ. When we read the genealogy of Jesus Christ in Matthew chapter 1, perhaps it seems tedious. But in fact, it provides a direct connection linking to many Old Testament figures, kings, for example, or ordinary people. They all have one thing in common. They are all connected to Jesus Christ. For in the flesh, Jesus is a descendant of David, and Naomi was David's great-grandmother. This was during the Judges' age. We know what was said in the Judges' age. In those days, Israel had no king. Everyone did as they saw fit, disregarding the commands of the law, compounded by foreign invasions. Truly a time of suffering for the people. There was a mother-in-law in the Judges' age named Naomi. The name Naomi itself means sweet. She was from Bethlehem. If you hear Bethlehem, it should sound familiar. Jesus was born in Bethlehem. But because of a famine, they fled to a foreign land, to Moab. During this time, her husband died, and her 2 sons also died. So not only did she become a widow, but she also seemed to have no hope. Of her 2 daughters-in-law, one left, but the other, Ruth, stayed and followed Naomi. Naomi, Ruth's mother-in-law, was from the tribe of Judah. Her 2 sons married foreign women, Moabites, so Ruth herself was a Moabite. Earlier in Joshua, we read about Rahab, who was saved. Today, we also mention Ruth, a Moabite. Both Moabites and Rahab were Gentile women, and both were saved. Not only saved, but they entered into Jesus' genealogy. As for Naomi, her mother-in-law, her life turned from sweet to bitter. For when she fled the famine, she went out full, but returned empty. Without her people, and without her possessions. Yet, her life took a turn, and afterward, it was transformed from bitterness to sweetness. Naomi means sweet. Mara means bitter. Because she was so bitter, she told people to call her Mara. It is like if your name is Candy, but you are in such pain that you do not want that name. Instead, you want to be called Mara, bitter, to express your state of mind. So what was the key that brought about her turnaround, and what is its significance for us? The theme of the book of Ruth is, a foreign woman receives salvation. Ruth was a Moabite. A foreign woman receives salvation. The structure of Ruth has 4 sections. The first section speaks of choice and loyalty, because the 4 chapters correspond to 4 sections. At the time, they were living in Moab. The name was Naomi. Because of the famine, they returned to Bethlehem, and her name became Mara. Ironically, they originally fled because of famine, and now they are fleeing back because of famine. On the right column, that is when they returned, they came to Boaz's field. Boaz was a relative of Naomi's husband, a man of wealth with the right to redeem the property of Naomi's husband, Elimelech. At that time, they had a custom, if a brother died, the living brother was to marry his brother's wife, whether he was the older or the younger brother. The child born would carry on the dead brother's name and inheritance. Chapter 2 speaks of grace and provision. There is common grace, and there is extraordinary grace. We can see this famous painting, The Gleaners, by the well-known artist, Millet. I am sure many of you are familiar with it. The law commands that during harvest, the gleanings that fall are not to be gathered. Thus, the poor can legitimately obtain them. Boaz showed Ruth common grace initially, but in the latter part of the chapter, it became extraordinary grace, specifically and intentionally given to her. Then chapter 3 speaks of redemption and courage. Naomi instructed Ruth to draw near to Boaz. Here, draw near is a subtle way of expressing her intention. Earlier, it was Boaz's field. Here it is, Boaz's threshing floor. During the threshing, everyone was resting at the floor. Naomi instructed Ruth to lie down at Boaz's feet, thereby expressing her heart. Boaz promised her that he would inquire if a closer relative was willing to redeem, including the wife and property of the deceased brother. If not, Boaz himself would redeem and marry her. Finally, we have fulfillment and hope. In the end, her marriage to Boaz made her the grandmother of King David. Here, Boaz actually prefigures Christ, and the Ruth represents us. In our flesh, we are Chinese from all over the world. Though we are not Israelites, we are married to Boaz. Thus, we become heirs of God and enter the genealogy of Christ. Let us look at the scripture. Naomi and Ruth returned to Bethlehem. In this age of the Judges, the book of Judges speaks of battlefields and slaughter, while the book of Ruth provides a contrast. Its setting is the peaceful countryside, where many events unfold. Don't call me Naomi, meaning sweet, she told them. Call me Mara, meaning bitter, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me. Ruth 1. When Naomi returned, many people knew about it, indicating she was not an ordinary person. Perhaps because of her husband, perhaps because of her own virtue, she had some influence. At this moment, Naomi expressed her inner state. She was like Mara itself. Brothers and sisters, do you remember when the Israelites came out of Egypt? They encountered a body of water called Mara, which means bitter. Ultimately, they threw a tree into the water, as God instructed Moses, and that tree made the bitter water sweet. So when Naomi's daughter-in-law Ruth married Boaz, ultimately her life also turned sweet. We can draw a parallel here. Continuing on, the key turning point from bitter to sweet, turning sweet again. The women living there said, Naomi has a son, and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. Ruth 4. In Ruth chapter 4, we see their beautiful ending. Of course, this was the son born to Ruth, because Naomi had lost her 2 sons and endured such bitterness. Therefore, they said, a son has been born to Naomi, again calling her sweet. Let us compare Matthew chapter 1, the genealogy of Jesus. It says, Salmon the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab, Boaz the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth, Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of King David. Matthew 1. Here we see a connection. Rahab was the Gentile woman who protected the 2 spies when they entered Canaan. Although she was a prostitute, by faith she obtained salvation for herself and her whole family. She and Salmon of the tribe of Judah were the parents of Boaz, and thus the connection is made. Boaz married Ruth, and they were the father of Obed, the father of Jesse, the father of King David. Let us put it all together. For the Israelites, this was the continuation of life. For it seemed that Naomi was without hope, yet unexpectedly, she became the great-grandmother of David. And for the Gentiles, Ruth the Moabitess obtained salvation and became an heir of God. An heir means entering God's family, included in Jesus' genealogy. Now let us think about it. Ruth could have been like her sister-in-law, returning to Moab and marrying someone else. But Ruth was willing to follow her mother-in-law, and she was very determined. She said, Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Ruth 1. I believe this was because the mother-in-law had a beautiful testimony, a beautiful life, so that Ruth developed a longing. This was different from foreign idols. Worshipping the Lord was different. Therefore, Ruth developed a longing and followed. Your people is God's people. Your God is the Lord. And he became Ruth's God. Thus, God preserved them and led them all the way. Fine Foods, 7 minutes. Quick reminder. Please email to request the Bible reading plan. We can read through the Bible once a year. You can start anytime. When you email, you can receive 2 Excel sheets. One is organized by scriptures, the other by dates. You can start anytime and make up missed readings when needed. By this time next year, you will have completed once through the Bible in a year. Everyone, keep it up. Reading Guide to Ruth. The theme of the book of Ruth is a foreign woman receives salvation set in the judge's age. Chapter 1, Naomi, who lost her husband and sons, receives blessing from neighbors. Chapter 2, Ruth meets Boaz in the field. This Gentile woman, Ruth, is actually like us Gentiles. We encountered Christ and our lives were changed. So Naomi sought a home for Ruth. Chapter 4, the final chapter, Boaz marries Ruth. Today's focus, the turning point in Naomi's life. From bitter back to sweet, bringing about the continuation of Israel's life and the Gentiles obtaining salvation, all because of the mother-in-law's testimony and Ruth's following. Blessed is the one whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. Fine food, 7 minutes. See you tomorrow.